The partnership between WWE and TNA heralds a new era for pro wrestling. An era where the biggest company in the game plays nicely with other promotions. Only recently have WWE learned the meaning of the word collaboration, and it's already proving fruitful for everyone involved, especially the fans. In a move that has shocked the wrestling world more than Brock Lesnar's high-pitched voice, WWE and TNA have joined forces. It's an unholy alliance that's got everyone talking. From die-hard fans to casual viewers who thought TNA stood for totally not active. But what does this mean for the future of wrestling? Will Roman Reigns finally acknowledge Moose as his tribal chief? Will Santino Marella finally get his win back over John Cena? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that this new partnership won't result in some great TV. Today we're going to break down this unexpected alliance, explore what it means for both companies, and speculate wildly about the future. But before we fantasy book this into oblivion, make sure to hit that like button. If you enjoy wrestling analysis, mini documentaries, and deep dives into the hottest stories, please hit that subscribe button for weekly content. Now, let's get into it. When was the last time WWE collaborated with anyone? The closest we got was Mickie James appearing in the 2022 Royal Rumble, and that was only because the company was short on women at the time. We've had some passive mentions of TNA over the past 20 years, but generally, Vince McMahon treated other companies like they were radioactive. But under Papa H, things are changing fast. Multiple WWE stars have popped up in other promotions, including AJ Styles and Noah, Shayna Baszler in GCW, and Io Sky in Pro Wrestling Marigold. This approach is treating wrestling fans like actual human beings with functioning brains, not like goldfish with WWE branded feeding tubes. So far, we've had Jordan Gray showing up at the Royal Rumble, Frankie Kazarian and Joe Hendry appearing on NXT. We've seen NXT star Trick Williams teaming up with Joe Hendry on TNA programming, and that's just the most memorable crossovers. It's like watching your high school friends hang out with your college buddies. Weird, but kinda cool. This back and forth has kept both brands exciting and unpredictable, and the ratings have proved this. NXT has always pulled a consistent rating, somewhere between 500 and 650,000 viewers per week. When it comes to TNA, the short answer is we don't really know how many people watch the show. Quite often, TNA doesn't rank in the most popular shows for the night it airs, meaning the viewing figures aren't public knowledge. Add this to the fact that it's on Access and also airs on YouTube, it means the viewership figures can be quite skewed. However, we can measure it by live show attendance, and TNA's last pay-per-view, Slammiversary 2024 in July, sold out with 4,000 fans in attendance. Given that TNA usually gets around 1,000 attendees for their big shows, this is a pretty significant increase. Was this related to the WWE partnership? Impossible to say, but as TNA legend Scott Steiner once said, the numbers don't lie. Here's where things get interesting. TNA has a number of ex-WWE stars under their banner. And since WWE owns the name they used in WWE, they go by different names now. The most notable one being Nick Nemeth, FKA Dolph Ziggler back in WWE. What happens when Nick inevitably pops up in WWE or NXT? Does he go back to being Dolph? Or does he stick with Nick and pretend like we all don't know who he is? And about Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder, he bounces around promotions like a pinball, and while he's not officially signed to TNA, he shows up there a lot. If this partnership continues, could we see Cardona back in a WWE ring? And most importantly, will Santino Marella make another appearance on WWE TV? He might have the worst finisher in history, but he was one of the most over people on the roster at one point. WWE has countless ex-TNA talent on their roster, including the likes of Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Xavier Woods, LA Knight, Ethan Page, and plenty more. But there's one name that, even though he's been with WWE for 8 years, is still synonymous with TNA, and that's AJ Styles. The phenomenal one isn't just a former TNA star, he is the TNA star. He was the face of the company for over a decade, carrying it on his back through its highest highs and lowest lows. Now imagine AJ Styles walking back into a TNA ring. Not only would it be a nostalgia pop for the ages, but it would legitimize the partnership in a way nothing else could. Of course, there's always the question of whether WWE will be willing to let one of their top stars appear in another promotion. But if AJ can show up in Noah, who's to say he can't make a pit stop in his old stomping grounds? From a business perspective, this partnership seems to be benefiting both sides. TNA is getting exposure to a wider audience, while WWE gets to dip its toes in the forbidden door without fully committing. It's like WWE is finally admitting that competition isn't a dirty word, and that's a breath of fresh air for all wrestling fans. In the long run, this partnership could fundamentally change the wrestling landscape. We know it's far from the first wrestling collaboration in the world, but it's normalizing cross-promotion corporations in a way we haven't seen since the territory days. This shift is fantastic for wrestling as a whole. It's like opening up a whole new buffet of opportunities for wrestlers at every level. Suddenly, the dream of appearing in a WWE ring isn't limited to those who sign exclusive contracts. There are only so many spots on a WWE roster. You couldn't fit an entire football team into a Mini Cooper. Someone's always going to be left out. But with this partnership, a TNA mid-carder could get a taste of that WWE spotlight without having to commit to a full-time contract. For the talent, it's like getting to test drive a Ferrari without having to buy it. Not only that, but a deal like this will light a fire under every wrestler's ass. Why? Because now there's a real chance that impressing in TNA could lead to a WWE appearance. Now, before we get too excited about this wrestling utopia, let's take off our rose-colored glasses for a moment. As much as we'd like to believe this partnership is all sunshine and suplexes, there might be a darker side to consider. Is WWE secretly using TNA as a glorified farm system? It's not exactly a stretch to imagine Triple H eyeing TNA's roster like a kid in a candy store, just waiting to snatch up the best and brightest for his own playground. After all, we've seen this before. Remember NXT UK? Triple H gutted the British scene and migrated the best talent over to the regular NXT. And let's not forget about the plans for NXT Japan that thankfully never materialized. So is TNA the next target on Papa H's hit list? Are they so starved for mainstream attention that they're willing to become WWE's personal talent buffet? And let's not kid ourselves, TNA isn't exactly in a position of power here. They're like the high school nerd who's just happy to be invited to the cool kids party, even if it means being the butt of all the jokes. The exposure they're getting from this partnership might feel great now, but at what cost? We all know that WWE's favorite board game is Monopoly. And with AEW providing stiff competition in terms of hoarding talent, is this Papa H's way of tipping the scales back in WWE's favor? Tony Khan already has Ring of Honor in his back pocket, so that place is off limits. Therefore, is Papa H eyeing TNA as WWE's official feeder system? And here's the million-dollar question. Would WWE owning TNA be a good thing or a bad thing for the wrestling world? On the positive side, it could mean more resources for TNA. Imagine TNA with WWE's production value and marketing machine behind it. It could be like NXT in its heyday, but with more creative freedom and a distinct identity. Plus, it would give wrestlers another viable path to WWE stardom without having to go through the NXT system. But on the flip side, we've seen what happens when WWE acquires smaller promotions. Remember WCW, ECW? Like watching your favorite indie band sign with a major label, only to have all their edges smoothed out and their best songs turned into commercial jingles. We've seen invasion angles before, and they're best forgotten about. But hear me out. If WWE did a TNA invasion angle, this time could be different. The last major invasion angle was 23 years ago, and today's wrestlers are just better. They're more athletic, more versatile, and more media savvy. But more importantly, we've got people at the helm who understand long-term storytelling. Papa H and Shawn Michaels aren't just booking for next week's rating. They're playing chess. Remember how pissed we were when Cody lost at WrestleMania 39? Well, we quickly changed our minds at WrestleMania 40. A well-executed TNA invasion could be exactly what WWE needs to make things must-watch. It could introduce new stars to the WWE audience, create fresh matchups, and most importantly, give us compelling television for months. While WWE might still be the king of the mountain, this TNA partnership is making that mountain a lot more accessible. Sure, there are potential pitfalls. We could be witnessing the early stages of a WWE takeover, or maybe it's all just an elaborate work. Will it last forever? Probably not. In wrestling, nothing does except Ric Flair's career. But for now, it's a thrilling ride that's breathing new life into both promotions. Alright wrestling fans, it's your turn. What do you think about this WWE-TNA partnership? Are you excited for the possibilities? Or is it going to end up like ECW,